Good morning. It is Monday, October 10th, 2022, and this is DC Signal to Noise. Since we last talked, OPEC plus countries cut output by a reported 2 million barrels per day. The Ingram Barge Company declared force majeure due to low water levels on the Mississippi River. President Biden warned of a nuclear Armageddon. The September jobs data was strong enough that traders anticipate a rate hike. The baseball postseason got underway and ended for some teams. My Cyclones can't put the dadgum ball in the end zone, and Election Day 2022 is just 29 days away. Jim Wiesemeyer, Pro Farmer Policy Analyst. Happy Columbus Day, Jim. I'm not surprised to see you at work, even though today is a federal holiday.
Our Indigenous Day. We have to
Penn
be
State.
woke, a little woke there.
That,
I was so depressed over the weekend when the Cardinals lost 2 straight that I went out and bought a Series 8 iWatch,
Yeah.
Apple iWatch. So I'm happy again.
Well, okay, sometimes, the old saying is that you can't buy happiness, but evidently
Oh, I
for Jim
can.
Wiesemeyer, that's not true.
Absolutely. I think that's a myth.
Welcome to you all. Glad that you are with us. I'm AgriTalk host Chip Flory, and good morning, Melody. Melody already gave us a shout out there in the comments tab. If you want to be part of the conversation or have any questions for Jim or me, go ahead and put them into the comments tab, and we will try to answer them. And if we can't answer them today, I'll make sure that Jim stays on it and finds you an answer by this time next week.
Yeah, and Chip, before I forget,
Yeah.
this evening, I'll join a number of people at a nice restaurant, my favorite one, actually, one of my favorites, Trattoria Alberto up on the hill, to meet and greet Texas A&M honor students. And we do this twice a year. David Wasserman will be there, Jeff Harrison, and I always look forward to see the young people coming into the ag sector.
Yeah, that's outstanding. I would like to get a report on the conversation. We don't have to get into the details, but just the topics that they want to discuss.
Absolutely.
It will be interesting.
Yeah.
Jim, let's start with one of with some of the things that happened last week, and the move by OPEC plus to cut oil output 2 million barrels per day. This has really painted President Biden and his energy policy into a corner, hasn't it?
Very much. And it's got more than a few Democrats worried that the energy prices, although down today a little bit, that's profit taking because we had a rather sharp increase in both the U.S. and Brent crude oil last week, Chip. And I think most of the analysts I've talked with within the oil industry say you're heading at or near $100, and that means continued higher gas prices in the United States. And you see that every day, those big signs on price per gallon, and that will have political implications.
Basically, what OPEC Plus is doing here is they are taking off of the market what the administration put onto the market by pulling stocks out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, correct?
Absolutely. And it's
who could have saw that coming, Jim?
Yeah, I know. And it's a geopolitical pushback on Biden. Earlier this year, he went over with fist in hand and encouraged them to increase production, and they've done the opposite. So the frazzled relations between our country and Saudi Arabia is getting worse, not better.
Yeah. So let's stay on this for just a bit, because aren't some members of the Senate considering a piece of legislation that would basically say no? What is it? No PEC?
No PEC. It's been bandied about before, but you have to go to the WTO. Give me a break. That'll be several years in the making. So but they are reviewing where everything's on the table, including Export controls, again, price control, basically price controls. And Wall Street Journal this morning has an excellent article basically concluding price controls don't work. And history shows that. But
Oh yeah.
they have some short-term gains, but long-term, you'll have lower prices than you would have otherwise, at least in the US when you're trying to control price. I mean, higher prices.
Yep. Yeah. I was going to save this for a little bit later in the conversation, but as long as we're there talking about what the Biden administration is considering, which is everything is on the table, National Economic Council Director Brian Deese suggested that one of Biden's options could include banning exports of American oil.
Yeah. It just that you talk about a slap in the face to EU. I don't
Yeah.
think that they shouldn't do it, but if they do it, we have more geopolitical problems. There's just not an easy short-term solution here because of the inability of our energy policy not to have encouraged U.S. oil production. And you're seeing it in the output, Chip. We should be well above in the million barrels per day had we continued the energy policies under the
Yeah.
prior administration. That's obvious to me.
Well, and I think you can argue that if we would have continued to produce, and now there would have been some ebbs and flows in production based on demand caused by the shutdown.
Yes,
I understand that,
it's called
but
markets.
exactly. But if we would have continued to grow the industry as it was growing, we would probably be in the 15 million barrel per day range, something like that.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't think this may be saying too much. Check me on it. I don't think we'd be looking at Putin's invasion of Ukraine because he wouldn't have any leverage.
It I think you make a point. That and for other reasons, the
Right.
Afghanistan pullout,
Yep.
coupled with the energy policy, coupled with the early days of the threats. Remember when Russia was threatening
Yeah.
some of the things that Biden and his administration officials said gave Putin the clear confidence to invade. And actually, many people in the Biden administration thought it would be over in a week.
Right. Right. Okay. Also on the list of things that the Biden administration is considering, even though we just said, and I mean, this has got to be understood that the reason that OPEC Plus cut is because the administration was releasing oil from the SPR. They're considering additional releases from the SPR to counter this move. Does the ball not keep rolling if that happens?
Well, there's murkiness on that because it's been said they're looking at 10 more million barrels in the month of November. We don't know. Again, I want to clarify. I've sought a clarification, and others have. Well, whether that's part of the original, remember the 180 million barrels or not. They initially said at the White House that was going to end at the end of October, but now they're saying they're going to piecemeal this into November. But I'll tell you something the energy people tell me, Chip, is that when you go further into that reserve, it's oil that's harder and harder to process.
Yeah.
To refine. So it's not going to be as easy as those first around 200, million barrels or so.
Right. They're also considering a tax holiday. I don't even want to really get into that too much because
that was defeated the last time.
Exactly. The Fed chairman and the Fed governors are jawboning down economic activity by talking about how much pain there's going to be. Well, the administration is trying to jawbone down gas prices by blaming those retailers out there and saying, doggone it, you're buying gas cheaper than what you're selling it for.
Well, you can just go. I'm working on my new speech PowerPoint, and there's one line I have is price gouging charges by the administration, pick your industry.
Yeah.
We've seen them price gouge about the meat industry, about the fertilizer industry, about the seed companies, and of course the oil.
Yeah. And of course, then this last one, the highest gas prices in the country are in California. And a big part of that is because of the taxes, the state taxes on it. So to counter that, Governor Newsom is considering additional taxes on the processors and refiners to beat down gas prices, saying you're making too much money, so we're going to tax you more.
Yeah.
Where are those taxes going to end up?
Yeah, he could
In the consumer's gas tank.
yeah, he could lead a country in Europe with that philosophy.
It's unbelievable.
Well, you think he's not going to run for president? He's, and plus they're giving out in a tax rebate checks to every Californian
Yeah.
of over $1,000, Jip. So
Yeah,
he's laying the groundwork.
absolutely. Okay. Couple of other things from last week before we move forward. Biden warns of a nuclear Armageddon.
The leader of France came after our president and said, pull it in. You shouldn't be doing that. And the White House pulled it back into the degree that said there's been no change in the U.S. Security people thinking about Russia. Well, then why did he say it? I know it was to a private funders, but he should know it. Anything you say in this country gets out, and
Yeah.
it did. It's
Yep.
just, a president. Yeah, I respect the presidency. So this is
Right.
uneasy times for me the last few years, but you're supposed to instill confidence in your nation, not high anxiety. And there's more than a few people are you're worried about this, statement, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and you're right, because President Trump was known for making his the over the top comments as well.
Yes.
But he caught a lot of crap for doing it. And now we've got another president that is making over the top
Yeah,
comments.
continued. We got a quick
Continues.
question here that I can answer. What's the
Okay.
status of labor unions ratifying the rail agreement? Any concerns that will impact harvest logistics? First, even if it were to go awry, they would continue talking. So I don't see anything that would impact harvest logistics from these talks. There's other things that will impact.
They'll continue talking, and they will continue running the rail service.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. The I wouldn't say a bigger concern, but an equal concern is the level of the Mississippi River and what's happening to the barge operators. Yeah. I mean, Ingram Barge Company had to declare force majeure just because they can't get things done. Now, it's my understanding that over the weekend, some of the pinch points have been widened and reopened, and the backlog is starting to flow again. But it's this is we are going to prove the value of that river to the grain markets and to agriculture and to the economy this fall, is what it looks like to me.
Yes. And Kirby, if you don't get Pro Farmer, you should. But if you don't, email me and I'll send you what we put out on the profarmer.com site on the update of those labor union talks. Just my last name at gmail.com, and I'll send it to you. Okay.
My last name. Yeah, that's easy. Some would call it Wiesemeyer. Some call it.
That's what Wasserman calls me. It's easy, Chip. Wiesemeyer. Every letter is an E except at the beginning.
Except for the second one.
How easy.
That's right. That's right. One last one from last week. The jobs growth came in. It slowed on a month-to-month basis because July was 500,000 plus something. The August was 300,000 plus. Now we're 250, 260. So the rate of gain is slowing, but it's still strong enough. The jobs market is still strong enough that the odds of a 75 basis point increase at the early November Fed meeting is actually went up.
About 85%, around 85%. Yes. Yeah. And then maybe a 50, basis points for the next one in December. But bottom line, Chip, the Fed watchers tell me they're going to, we'll have to see those job growth plunge to about 50,000.
Yeah.
before the Fed gets comfortable. They're after the labor market. That's
Yep.
clear. After boosting it for well over a year, they want to see the numbers go significantly down and stay
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. They want to hurt it first.
They do.
Yep.
They do. And
Absolutely.
by the time you do that, that's the fear
Yeah.
that they would have gone too far,
Right.
too fast.
Yeah. The
So
risk.
that's the conundrum, and that's why a soft landing is hard to get at.
Yep.
The odds have gone up for a hard landing. It could get brutal for the first quarter next year. It really could. Not only here, but around the world. We have IMF and
Okay.
World Bank meetings this week, and
Right.
tomorrow we're going to get an update from the IMF, International Monetary Fund, on the economic projections, U.S., China, the world, et cetera, and that's going to be ugly as well.
Okay. All right. Over the weekend, let's move on to that. The bridge in Crimea that connects to the Crimean Peninsula. Has anybody claimed responsibility for the? You can't call it destruction. The damage to the bridge.
Damn, no, but all signs do point to Ukraine.
Yeah.
There's, I don't know what the word for it is, but their secret service, and Putin has already declared it was them, and now he's being pressured big time
Yeah.
for a big comeback retaliation, and you saw some of that overnight, where he bombed Kiev, the capital, for the first time in many months.
Right. Um, it feels like we're into a period of escalation in the conflict again as we get closer and closer to cold weather.
Yeah, and let's connect dots, Jeff. Here, that means the odds have gone up that you will not see an extension or an expansion of the Ukraine export
Grain deal.
agreement,
Yeah.
and because of Russia and Putin, and that's why you have the grains are up substantially.
Oh yeah. In the overnight trade, wheat was 30 to 35 cents higher. Corn was 7 to 8.5 cents higher. Soybeans even came along for the ride, traded about 25 cents higher in the overnight. So
Yeah. See, this
lots of
is why
strength.
we cover all this in our daily
Yeah,
reports, because there are market connections with policy.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Obviously, something that we have to continue to watch very closely there. Also, over the weekend, the White House issued sweeping restrictions on selling semiconductors and chip making equipment to China.
And it got China's attention too. And as they go into the 16th, begins their about a week party congress, and it's big because they have it every 5 years, and that's going to be critical, Chip, to see China's reactions not only to the chip issue from the U.S., but also if Xi gives any clues on Taiwan during his speech, which usually lasts 2 to 3 hours, by the way, uh, on the 16th. And we're also going to look at the lineup of the officials with him on the stage, because there's big changes going on at the top level of China's government. But any comments he makes on Taiwan will be microscoped as to
Yeah.
far if and when and how he's going to deal with Taiwan.
Yeah. Yeah. We've covered two of these meetings now with Xi, correct?
Yes.
And each of them coming out of it has been high. There's been some high anxiety coming out of it, just in putting perspective on exactly what the actions mean for the world and the global economy going forward. And the anxiety is pretty high already going into this one, Jim. It's
Absolutely.
yeah.
And we Pro Farmer has several China watchers, and I
Mhm.
can't wait for their assessment after his speech, because again, it's going to be an important element.
Okay, before we get to some of the issues coming up this week, let's go ahead and get to Gary's question here. He says, is what the Netherlands are doing by buying out the top polluters ultimately the end goal of ESG, that being environmental social governance?
Uh, there's both, that could be an element, but you have pushback here big time with more Republican leaning groups against the ESG, and now you have some states uh, giving
Yes.
signals to companies that they will withdraw their funds of certain groups if they
Well, they're
continue.
pulling money away from a bank. Which bank was it,
I
Jim?
got it in. I got it in today's
I'm looking
report.
for it too.
It's down at the very end. Let's see.
Yeah, no, this
South
is an
Carolina. South Carolina pulls money from BlackRock over ESG.
BlackRock.
Yeah, and this is money. This is not, chit
It
change. The state's treasurer plans to withdraw $200 million from the firm by year end, joining Louisiana and Utah. So they're pulling their investments to punish the firm over its commitment to environmental investing policies, Chip.
Yeah, and BlackRock is maybe not the most forward facing on this, but they have endorsed they have embraced the ESG for the future.
Yes.
And these states are basically saying you're going the wrong direction with this.
Yeah. And most of the ag meetings I go to, this comes up as a threat.
Oh, it should.
Yes, it's always on the agenda.
It absolutely should come up every time. I mean, this is yes. Yeah, we talk about why okay, the number of started but uncompleted oil wells is at like at the lowest level since 2014.
It's a long time.
Okay, yeah, but the reason it is because we're not starting any more wells.
Yes. I
And part
yes.
of the reason for that is there's still a lot of independent drillers out there that have got to go and get money and operating loans someplace, and they can't get it because of the ESG
Yes.
governance.
Yes. And that's called a conundrum.
Oh, it's it's called it's called solar better work, wind better work, because if it doesn't, at some point we're going to get cold.
And Venezuela better step up their production because the White House is talking to them.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, another big one for this week. We've got Prop 12 before the Supreme Court of the United States tomorrow, Jim. Give us
Well, we have a backgrounder, I guess, again on this on profarmer.com. But bottom line, it's going to be, can California dictate the policies of all the other states? And they're going to huff and puff tomorrow
yep.
at the Supreme Court. We probably won't have the final ruling until sometime next June. But this is big, Chip, for the pork industry, because if California was successful, this would be used as a template to come after other issues within the ag sector. The animal rights people are presenting their case on this one from that perspective. It's better for the animal, but that's being challenged by people who actually raise hogs on that.
Okay, exactly. And this is the headline item of the week for us. Because of what it means, it's going to set the precedent on how this is going to go forward. We talked last week about the importance of WOTUS and how important the case was last week. And doesn't this just, fill time before we get to the next uh, conflict or court case regarding WOTUS? Aren't we in 10 years from now going to be talking about the final rule and defining the waters of the U.S.?
I think so. I
Well,
think so because they're going to define better rather than keep it nebulous for the courts like they
yes,
did the last time on the waters of the US. They're going to try to narrow the definition of it. And if
exactly.
so, that would be good for the ag sector.
Yes. So, in other words, in 10 years, I don't think we're going to be talking about what the rules of the waters of the U.S. are because it's going to be settled by this definition.
Let's hope so. And I
I
think
so I that the issue on how states can influence production of with animal agriculture in other states I think is going to be settled by this decision, isn't it, Jim?
Yes. And let
It's
me,
that important.
yes, for the listeners and viewers, when you read stories about tomorrow's meeting, like last week's on WOTUS, some people can give too much weight on the types of questions the Supreme Court justices
Yep.
ask. That doesn't mean a signal inherently to how they're going to vote. Some justices like to penetrate one's argument for further understanding. So it's a little dangerous to predict. You know, it's like predicting the U.S. corn and soybean crop based on the weekly crop developments. You know,
Yes.
it's a method, but still you can't peg that crop. You know, based on those ratings, similar to the Supreme Court. So don't misread too much into the questions.
Yeah. But let's certainly pay attention to the questions that are asked.
Yes. Well, on WOTUS, as we said, I think last week, I think it all depends on John Roberts because
Yeah.
he's the more of the swing. But even if he were to vote more for the more expanded WOTUS definition, he has to bring on at least one other conservative justice member, and that is unlikely. So that's why most of the ag sector lawyers I've talked with on this see a narrower definition. That's the bottom line. Watch John Roberts, the
Okay.
head of the court.
Okay. Just very quickly on this, the Department of Labor is expected to unveil the final H2A worker rule updates. That's going to come on October 12th, Jim. It, something that we're going to have to watch fairly closely there as well.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Wednesday, also on October 12th, we get the crop production and world ag supply and demand estimates.
Yes, and big world numbers too on that
Yeah.
one. And as Brian on Pro Farmer said, we could get some big balance sheet changes here
Oh, we
relative to
should.
recent reports. We should, and so you know, you can quibble with what USDA says about crop numbers, but they're still the one that the trade bounces off of
Oh, yeah.
once they are released. But we're
Yep.
also going to have to see those South American numbers too on crops, Chip.
Absolutely. On October 13th, the House Select Committee investigating the January 6, 2021 Capitol Hill riots is going to hold its next public hearing. I think the most important thing that I saw in your update on that, Jim, is that a summary report has been rumored to be released ahead of the November 8 elections.
Yes. The final report after November 8th elections, but you think they're going to not release preliminary summary? They will.
Yeah. And the timing on that is going to be very interesting.
Yes.
September producer price index comes on
Producer Wednesday,
on
CPI
Wednesday.
Thursday.
Okay.
Yes.
Two
Big
very
report.
important pieces of information for the Fed.
Big reports because they're data driven now, and they should have been focused a year ago on inflation. Now they're absolutely focused on it, and
Right.
it just 1 month won't change them, but they've got to see the core rates coming down consistently.
Right. Earlier, I mentioned that there is another Federal Open Market Committee meeting early next month. It's actually
November 1, 2.
November 1st and 2nd. It's just a week before Election Day. So still looking for that 0.75% increase on that.
Yeah, why it's important, Chip, when they go first lower than 75, because that'll
Yeah.
show again lower. So it's the beginning of the pivot,
Yep.
you know.
We're not there yet.
Oh no, I don't
Not
think
as
you'll
far
be
as I
there
can tell.
until the first quarter of next year, if then.
Right.
If then.
Right. Okay. You mentioned this earlier. I'm just another reminder. IMF and World Bank annual meeting begins in Washington today. We get the Fed minutes from the last meeting on Wednesday.
Yes. And that's
And
always important because it shows kind of the attitude of the Fed members on
right,
that.
right, exactly. And it seems like there was one last one that I wanted to mention. Oh, yeah. And we did talk about this earlier, that the grain deal between Russia and Turkey and Ukraine expires in November, but it looks like UN officials are going to try to keep that deal going, heading to Russia later this month to work on a deal to extend that deal.
Yes, and
All
Putin
right.
has been, even before this bombing of the bridge, has been saying it should go to truly needy countries, not to, not to countries that can pay outright for it, like in Europe,
Right.
I guess he meant.
Right.
And back on the IMF and World Bank, the Financial Times this morning reported that the U.S. and Germany are publicly pushing the World Bank to do more to address climate change. So there's your policy murphing into
Yeah.
financial institutions, Chip.
Yep. Gotcha. Gotcha. I'll give you 30 seconds. Anything else that you feel like we missed?
No, other than working on my next PowerPoint, I'm trying to be upbeat, but it's awfully hard to. So we have to go through
Go
some.
buy yourself another Apple,
I'll,
something or
I'll
another.
tell you, there's not much more I can buy. I will say this: after we go through this, it's going to be really rough over the next quarter or two. But
Yep.
you have to get the low to start going up, and at least I see it sometime next year. But
Yep.
lot of concerns out there, Chip. From a geopolitical perspective,
Very good.
we're in
Very
changing
good.
times.
We're going to talk more about Prop 12 and the Supreme Court hearing, that is arguments that are going to take place tomorrow on this morning's Agri Talk. We're also going to have a report from Machinery Pete, and we'll talk about the importance of getting out there and scouting for SCN. Of course, this afternoon we've got John Payne from Hedge Point Global. That's this afternoon at 2:06 on Agri Talk. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here this morning. Have a great week. Keep watching for those signals.